This is Melissa. It's Real History on the 30th of April, 2026, and I'm really excited to be talking with Annie and Adon in Australia, the AAA. We've had a nice conversation before. You'll see them, they're in their car. They've got the laptop straddled on the gear shift. And so we're just going to embark on a conversation. We can talk about anything we want, but let's start with the weather.
Rightio. Well, here here in central New South Wales, we've got we're about 4.5 hours, 5 hours inland from the east coast. We've got pretty harsh, dry conditions. We're in a bit of a drought. It's hard for the farmers. Uh, Feed's going up. A lot of the farmers are either given up on sowing or ploughing and sowing their fields this season, because if you don't sort of get it done within the next month or so, we're into the winter conditions and plants aren't going to grow for you.
Hmm.
But we're on, us personally, we're on a smaller family homestead type situation. So we've got our gardens in and we're carting water around and getting some vegetable production and going and keeping our animals healthy. So we're all right.
Now,
Um,
Annie
Another,
was Annie was
yeah.
saying right before we hit record that they're paying the farmers not to farm a so it's bad enough that you've got the drought conditions, but now farmers are being paid not to farm because of carbon offset. So there's a
Yeah, there's
and
some.
people can't feed their livestock at the moment either.
Yeah, yeah. Well, a lot of the broader acre farmers have been given all this money incentive to sort of do carbon reduction schemes by simply tying up areas and fencing them off, and no farmers allowed to touch them. So, I would say this could this be like government tokenism and corporations, sort of will offset our businesses through these farmers indirectly or however it works. But ultimately, less land in production will manifest as scarcity down the line.
Hmm. Hmm.
Very suspicious on all of that. And the more of the local farmers I get to know, the more far-reaching it turns out to be.
Well, you have spent a long time doing different farming and kind of community farming projects that you've been involved with a good more than a decade. And then you and Annie met during that terrible Operation C and got together. And so
Yep.
maybe you can just each of you tell a little bit about where you're from, where you are now, how you came together, and what your kind of ideas for a good way to live and a good way to raise a family. And just launch in if you want to and give a little bit of background on yourselves.
Right. Yeah. Well, I'll start, I guess. So yeah, I the penny dropped with me when I was pretty young. I was in the workforce early as a metal engineering and as a boilermaker is the term, which is inaccurate nowadays. It's metal engineering, but
Mhm.
I was probably about 19, 18 when the penny started to drop with me, and I was like, oh my god, the world is ruled by these corporations, and they've got this impunity about them. And then I looked into the fractional reserve lending, the banking system, and one of my first wake up calls was the aerosol injection programs.
Mhm.
So I ended up ringing all the councils, and I got onto the Board of Environment and Heritage, which is Australia's government department for managing the environment, supposedly. And I was speaking to the woman on the phone. This is probably like 18 years ago now, 17, 18 years ago. And she came quite brazenly out and just was saying to me, well, yeah, we know cloud seeding's going on. It is going on. They give you the surface level. Oh, it's just for cloud seeding, or maybe Perisher Blue, the snow the snow resort. We're just doing it
Mhm.
to enhance the snow for these resorts and stuff like that. But then I stumbled upon more of the patent and technologies, and I stumbled upon more, and I was very concerned as a youth about this. And no matter how much I talked to people, I just kept getting met with sort of apathy and indifference. So I had a change of heart, and I had my trade, and I decided I wanted to become self sufficient, because the first, well, learn the life skills of self sufficiency.
Mhm.
I deduced that how can you have much freedom when you're codependent, and we've lost all the life skills. That's
Mhm.
rendered us very codependent. So I felt my journey was in that, and then I took whatever funds I had, and I basically dedicated my life to regenerative agriculture and permaculture and whatever terms you want to put onto it, which comes with all these other life skills. It could be water harvesting infrastructure and how to build passive solar heating into your structures, and how to zone things. And um, zoning is basically designing the more maintenance intense things around your home space. So permaculture design, really, and many
Mhm.
other aspects. And I became like a bit of a gypsy nomad gardener, and I went from community to community and certain research institutes, and basically filled my cup up, my knowledge, with as much about land regenerative practices and agroecology, to a point where I felt satiated. I took about a decade of doing that, and I decided to do, like, live in a way of exchange. So basically, I would come in, help families or farmers get their place up and going, and refine their systems, and help improve what they'd already done, and grow my food for myself and others. And that was my exchange for a place to stay.
Mhm.
But I had no stakehold in that. But in doing so, I met a lot of good people with their hearts in the right places, and I learned from a lot of the best practitioners, and I did all kinds of courses on different things. So that takes me to where I am now, and I'm 36, just about 36, and we're kind of now in the beginnings of starting something that we can call our own. That we intend to sort of not only do the regenerative and the homesteading thing, but hopefully get a bit of a community going. And again, that word community, it's thrown about a bit loosely, but yeah,
Mhm.
we we're talking about self-sufficient life skills, exchange of goods and services, as we go into this more precarious future where we're looking to, be kind of rendered dependent on the digital ID.
Mhm.
Everything will be micromanaged. So we obviously have our line in the sand with how much we'll capitulate, how much we will renounce in order to receive the benefits. So again, I'm just emphasizing how can we actually have real freedom and sovereignty and autonomy if we're basically going to the shopping center and we're paying for every little thing we have. We need to go back to the land and learn the life skills so that we can truly subsist with any kind of dignity or quality of life. Yeah.
So
But
after I talked to you, I didn't really know what permaculture was, as opposed to other kinds of gardening that get talked about. I didn't really understand, and you explained to me that it's everything in an environment, from the architecture to the trees, how water is captured and moved and directed, and I don't know that we'll do that today, but you took your camera and kind of walked me through the land there and showed me some different things that you were doing in the greenhouse and where your water comes from, and it was very interesting. Now, I was talking to Graham and Gabrielle G&G, the nomad gardeners. I did a real history with them a while back, and he's like, "Oh yeah, yeah." I said, "I think he studied with somebody named," and he said Geoff Lawton, and I said, "Yeah, that's it. That's the name." So he sent me a whole package of videos to watch, which were very interesting, and I have to say, inspiring
Yeah,
too. Yeah, you
yeah,
watch this.
yeah.
It's
That sorry.
no, go ahead.
Yeah, that source of inspiration was came to me not only to see it firsthand, but Geoff Lawton has projects overseas, or has over the years many, and one of them is in the Jordanian desert, um, and it's probably getting on to 12, 15 years old now easily, and there's, well, maybe 20 years old, and they've you've taken the driest, hottest, flattest part of the earth pretty much. You're talking 200 mils of rain each year, very, very harsh conditions. And they've, through the right principles and practices, they've gotten an edible forest garden. It's beautiful. It looks like an oasis. Anyway, as an example, like, to see that we can take some of the most, what we would consider uninhabitable landscapes, and with the right, energy and methods, we can turn them into the most beautiful and hospitable environments in the world. And just like all of us, we've been fed all this this really kind of pessimistic attitude about humans and overpopulation, and that it's almost intrinsic within humans that we can't coexist without being destructive to the life support systems that we're relying on. It's almost
Hmm.
like, where's an example of where humans can inhabit the earth without basically decimating it, and everyone just basically takes it as an ultimate truth that you can't, like, wherever humans exist and their numbers grow, so will the destruction of the local ecosystem and the exhaustion of the waterways and hydrology. So to finally firsthand see that humans can enhance the life support systems, we can enhance it 100-fold. We can be such an asset to it, which really made me come to the realization that that feels probably more like our original purpose. That if
Hmm.
we're like organisms in this complex food web, that we can actually sort of orchestrate an ecosystem, enhancing it and optimizing it beyond what even it could do itself. That it is not a prerequisite that, or a destiny that basically humans destroy what we wherever we exist.
Hmm.
So that was a big thing for me to, and then to envision the possibilities. But I suppose it's now wading through all the inhibitions that the system throws at us. You'd think an advanced culture or civilization would encourage the younger families, or anyone for that matter, but especially younger families. You would think they would they would welcome people to the land, to develop it, to make it productive. That's the backbone of a civilization, is its working class. So to sit back and realize everything is trying to exhaust money out of you, get put you through all these loopholes with, um, put you through all these hoops to get licenses and permits to sort of like change the water course so that you can
Hmm.
harvest it. You could ask
Hmm.
permission for that, or you could ask permission for to build a structure. Everything is kind of complicating it, and it's making it harder for people to exist and flourish, which is the against, like, yeah, what we should be doing as a civilization. So yeah.
One of the videos that Graham sent me, well, there were several about a man in Austria named Sepp Holzer, who did high altitude gardening and a lot of
Mm.
different layers. And he built, I think, 70 ponds on the original farm. Now he's in his 80s now. He's turned that farm over to his son and moved to a different location. And he and his wife in their 80s are still at it. But the thing that you just reminded me of there, he took over the farm from his father, I think in 1962, but he was threatened repeatedly with arrest, imprisonment, fines for not pruning his fruit trees. You really couldn't believe that. I mean, the
Yeah,
micromanaging that goes on, it's like, wow. But
yeah. That's something that is there's as many eco-fascists we call them, but like environmentalists that are working through government departments and certain institutions that are just as officious here. They will come and claim, that weed is a huge threat to the surrounding farmers, and they'll give you fines if you don't spray certain biocides on certain weeds. And not only that, these particular weeds, like for example blackberry, if you're in the cooler temperate areas, or if you go into the subtropics from the Queensland border, you get a lot of lantana
oh,
from
I love
Newcastle and, and,
lantana.
and north. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
So there's just two examples, but they're they're trying to always spray these chemicals and these toxins to supposedly go to war with something which is actually a regenerative process.
They
And
don't like lantana?
no, no, they consider it a noxious weed that smothers over the natives, and everything comes back to what is perceived to be a native species. And if
Yeah.
it's not a native species, then it's invasive, and then which is again a totally, it's not substantiated as far as they're concerned. It is, but they've got all this false rhetoric and um, twisted academia. So I've
Well, what
really
they need
looked at.
to do is build a border wall and do mass deportation of invasive species. Just round them all
Yeah,
up and ship them back where they came from. It's so crazy.
yeah, and then I would always come back going, well, hang on, you're not native, and I'm not native, and we don't eat any native foods. The animals aren't native. You try and go and exist and live with totally native species here, you're going to go pretty hungry. So,
And you got to rip all your lawns out. The
Yep.
grass is a pain.
Yeah, yeah.
and you could go to Mongolia and you'll have the same sets of weeds proliferating there, of dandelion, of plantain, of the same sorts of thistles. You go to South America, the same things will be there too when the climate and the conditions are appropriate.
Uh-huh.
Dandelion, nettle, etc. So this idea that something isn't native, but if nature is showing you that something naturalizes and this species can be on numerous places in the globe, who's to say without, like, it's not irrefutable to say that that's part of nature, that's part of the evolution of things.
Yeah.
So yeah, we have to get through these fallacies, these predicates that they're operating on, which ultimately all I could see as it manifests as the the denuding of the waterways and the
Mhm.
constant spraying of these chemicals. It's like you can't. They're supposedly environmentalists and they're poisoning the waterways, and I'm seeing the algae blooms and the death of all these aquatic species. So something that was a huge lifeblood to the environment and the people of that community, you've always got these government departments coming through and nuking it and bombing and killing it. And you know, when you look further up and you do the due diligence on who makes these chemicals and who creates the academia and to
Yeah.
substantiate the use of it, and then
Mhm.
who's colluding with the government departments to put it out, you realize it's all tied, of course. You're talking multi-billion-dollar industry.
Hmm.
But to get that message through to the common man that's acting as an acolyte for these agencies, that's
Hmm.
very hard to get through because
Hmm.
we're we're so compartmentalized and reductionistic in how we think about an ecosystem when it's so much more complex than we could ever fathom. That anyway, so the permaculture, the agroecology, the regenerative farming is teaching you how to think about something which you see, but you don't know how to think about it in the way that it really is functioning. We see it through such filtered lenses
Hmm.
that, and ultimately that has turned into most farmers, most people that have any land to deal with, they're fighting natural ecological processes which
Hmm.
they could be working with to give them more fertility, to give them more production. Most of us are all kind of destroying and fighting against these processes, which is kind of just digging our own grave. We're constantly stifling the potential yield
Hmm.
that we could see. So I've always, yeah, my passion is to basically try and show people and demonstrate how we can harmonize with certain processes in nature, how we can enhance them to actually get production. Yeah.
Well, there was one thing in one of the videos that I was watching that said that the best conditions for growing maximum food is when you have the most of everything going on, and that means weeds. Because the
Yep.
more that you have in an area and really dense these some of these what they call forests, these garden forests, then you're attracting everything that you need for cross pollination and
Yep.
replenishing the soil, which is one of the parts of one of the videos was amazing. There was a fellow who was doing this. He passed away probably about 20 years ago now, Englishman named Robert Hart. And he was teaching this in England and, maybe internationally too. But there was a couple that they talked to, probably, I mean, this is years ago, but when they talked with them on camera, they were probably about your age. And they had moved into what looked like council housing in England. I mean, it was just really tight houses. They're single family homes, but there are like four of them to a building, and then there's another building and another building, so really tight. And you see their place, and they have a backyard that's like a postage stamp.
Yep.
Nothing big, maybe a little bit long, but not wide at all. And they had some before and after pictures of what they were doing, and they said we didn't want to spend any money. We didn't have it to spend, and we wanted to start working with everything that's here, but we wanted to apply these principles. So they went in the backyard, which had been completely paved with paving tiles, outdoor paving tiles. There was just a little strip of grass on either side of that. And so they tore all of that up, but they didn't destroy it. What they did was very clever. They kept a little walkway for themselves, and then they used the tiles that they tore out and used it to make raised bed gardening, to,
Yep.
make the walls for the raised beds. And by the time they were done, however many years late, a few years later, when we're looking at their backyard now, it's like a jungle. It's an
Yeah.
incredible jungle with all kinds of levels of things going on at every level that you can look at. And they, took spare tires and turned them into planters. And it's just stuffed with fruit trees and vegetables
Yep.
and, everything going on there. And they said the same thing. The more you have, and I think Graham and Gabrielle say this too. I hope I don't get it wrong, but they said, never weed, we don't weed. Don't weed.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
you don't need
Yeah.
to.
It's that principle of the more diversity, the more resilient your little ecosystem is.
Yes.
Or or big your ecosystem is. But
Yeah.
yeah, and that like got a principle of correspondence on the surface. If you've got more species interacting and in that ecosystem, Well, so you do also below the surface in terms of the soil microbiology. The more complex that soil food web is, the more resilience you have to drought, the better
Mm-hmm.
the exchange of nutrient and nutrient cycling. So, the creation of humus,
Mm-hmm.
which is a colloidal, stable, plant available nutrient. That's what good biology is doing. So, yeah, everything where really comes down to in the ideal setup is maximum diversity and density and layering, and you're harvesting more sun. You're
Mm-hmm.
transmuting it into more potential yield when you do that. So there's a lot to unlearn for some people. We've
Yeah.
obviously gone too monotonous with the arrangement of species and stuff like
Mm-hmm.
that, which can be done too in a sustainable way. But if to me, I see, all right, what's the minimum maintenance for highest output? And I look at the edible forest garden as a system. And there's another English fellow called Martin Crawford, and he put out edible forest gardening in books and lots on YouTube on his sort of for his cool temperate English climate, what types of things you can do.
Mm-hmm.
And this is what a lot of people fail because as Europeans or European descent, we took a lot of annual like this annual species that be grain and annual vegetables, which are, they have their year or 2 year lifespan and then they die out. And then we have to reset the system. What Martin Crawford and a few others that specialized in the edible forest gardening setup is they have books that totally are on perennial vegetable production. So there's a whole lot of cuisine and food unknown to us Westerners that is in the category of perennial foods, which are more nutrient dense and they self propagate. And you can basically set them up and almost forget, and they will always be there
Mm-hmm.
and they're very easy to propagate. So it's not like an intensive annual production system where you got to turn the soil over and sow in all the seeds and do your mulching and set it up for that season, and you got to redo it again at the end of the season.
Mm-hmm.
And as people get into their older age bracket, that that workload starts to become daunting, you
Mm-hmm.
know.
Mm-hmm.
So perennial vegetables, if you look at Martin Crawford's Perennial Vegetables book, and there's another fella from the States that did what you were talking about, very small urban
Mm-hmm.
intensive system. I think his name's Eric Townsmere, Eric Townsmere, and it's called Perennial Vegetables too. There's two books from those two authors, and it's all on the types of perennial vegetables you can get, and most of them are species we don't know of. They're perennial onions and certain bulbs and tubers and varieties of things that we aren't even familiar with in the West. So
Mm-hmm.
I would strongly encourage people coming into the future for sustainable production or low energy, low
Mm-hmm.
input, high output things that you can set up and forget about. We need to go into perennial vegetables. Yeah.
All right. Well, I will get pictures of those books and people and put them in the video so that people can and link to them so that they can find that out. Now, Annie, you're up. So, hello. Where are you from and how did you
I
meet?
I grew up in Russia, and in Russia, it is like the States that you get the whole summer off school. So going from the city and a school that's 4 stories high, and your lunch break is inside, and there's so little outdoor time. Come the summer, my great aunt, God bless her, she would always invite myself and my cousins onto her dacha plot. They're called dachas. It's where Russians can go to around about a hectare of land uh, to garden and get some food production for the summer. And there I watched her carry buckets, and she got us small kids to scythe and get involved, and uh, just doing things sometimes the hard way,
Hmm.
but I could see that that she enjoyed that labor, and I kind of just got to be myself there and be in my own head and not have everyone put ideas in my head. And sometimes I'd walk to the very back of the whole dacha area and just be in the forest and look at the trees and just be in that silent space, observing nature. And when I moved to Australia when I was 10, and everything was like so enchanting, we were instantly kind of put under a spell in the suburbs with all the lights and all the shops and all the TV. And not that I didn't have TV in Russia, but it was next level, the cartoons. You start to forget kind of the good life, the summers. But I never did. And when I met Adon 3.5 or more years ago now, and I came on and I saw that it was very much like dacha. The idea here was just that. It brought tears to my eyes, and I thought, finally. Back in the suburbs, we had a mandarin tree that would come over the the fence, and when it would produce well, I would get into a good mood and bag it all up and leave some bags of mandarins at the neighbors' front doorsteps. So I craved that community and that neighborly relationships, but could never quite get there until you get out of that environment.
Hmm.
Uh, yeah, so I'm committed, as Adon is, to this lifestyle, um, especially when meeting Adon and kind of being somewhat red pilled, if you'd like. And I think Alan put it as righteous indignation, that someone must be really indignant to what's going on in history and what's going on now, uh, to make a concrete life change.
Hmm. Yeah.
And yeah, for me, for us and our family, there's nothing else but to transition into self-sufficiency.
And that's excellent. I love to hear that. But that is the thing. It's, you know, the righteous part of the indignation has to come with the indignation. Because if you're just indignant and angry and that they shouldn't and this is wrong, the righteous in front of it means that you are going to do something. And
Yeah.
it honestly, I don't think it matters that much what you do if you do it. Hopefully it involves looking at yourself and making some changes and seeing your own the way that you've participated in the system, because that is going to probably bring about real change, long lasting change. But most people just sit and watch what's happening as a spectator sport, angry all the time, but not doing anything, not making any changes. And that's not useful to people or anybody, it's not useful to you or anybody else to live like that. So I
Hmm.
think it's good that you got red pilled and righteously indignant and left the suburbs and went out and did something. And you've got a family
Hmm.
too with you that you're teaching
Yeah,
and
my 8-year-old especially, we don't keep the realities of the system from her. And yeah, it means that when she does go back to the suburbs, that she is an observer, not an absorber.
that's
I
great.
remind her that sometimes observe, don't absorb. And she says, yep, yep. Uh, yeah, we watched. She's got a very curious mind, and she wants to be told interesting things. And she says, "Can I stay up with you and talk about the system in the evening?" Well, we watched the Jungle Book the other day, the newest
Mm.
edition. And I said, every time I point to the screen, it is because there is a subliminal message there that then renders the viewer as a downloader. And yeah, just such a story that seems so innocent. There was so much there about
Hmm.
possession and kind of being a bit of a brat and not listening to your elders, and the list went on and on. But uh, yeah, our kids are really grounded and they have responsibilities. Uh, my 5-year-old chops wood, and my 8-year-old, she likes to sew and weave, and there's a textiles class that we go to. So yeah, thinking about all the aspects of self-sufficiency, not just food, uh,
Hmm.
is how we try to live and bring the kids up. Uh, yeah.
Did you mentioned something to me earlier about the three P's?
I was, before I met Adon, starting to go in the direction of new age kind of thinking, and with that comes the uh, what you convince yourself of as trauma from your childhood when your parents didn't give you enough attention, or whatever realistically small thing it may be that kind of hurt your ego. So when it came to my daughter, and I believe this has been by design, where the system kind of had you as a child so disconnected, and so there was so much overimposing of what you should be doing at school or after school. And the New Age movement kind of almost convinces you that it was all the fault of the people around you. And then there's the overcompensation for that. So I wanted to have a child, and for that child to be my best friend.
Mm.
And she could do whatever she wanted almost. So at 2 years old, she was negotiating with me, and I thought it was the best thing ever. And that she was growing up, I was trying to teach her, I was trying to treat her like an adult
Hmm.
because I wanted a close adult relationship in my life. And when I met Aiden, she was 5, and there were some epic tantrums. And I remember there was a moment in the shower where she was really giving it to me as far as um, what I was asking her to do. And Aiden stepped in and he said, "You will not treat your mother like an emotional doormat." And I was kind of just really taken back. What do you mean? What do you mean? She's just expressing herself. These emotions are natural. And it was that stern kind of fatherly approach that he took that I thought that he was being very cold. And as time went on and he started to help me discipline, uh, and rather than reacting, because I started to have respect for Aiden, I asked him why. Why did you just kind of really tell her off and scream at her? And um, yeah, the way he explained it. Do you want to explain?
Oh, we'll have to go back to that, but I suppose, yeah, I after analysing it for some years, I take a lot of what our ancestors did in terms of discipline as more valid than the New Age movement, to put it vaguely, but the New Age
Hmm.
movement is promoting
Hmm.
that they do come into this world ignorant of what certain social boundaries are. And if your child has antisocial behaviors, that has repercussions with those that live in her social dynamic. And that's, you got to establish and teach them what these boundaries are and these parameters of behavior are. But if they've been kind of conditioned to believe that they are as equal as any adult, then they don't understand when they're pushing for something that's unacceptable, really. And so, yeah, I suppose not everything needs to be equated to it's going to give them some emotional baggage or trauma, as we put it. Throw this word around all the time. You're not if you're giving them their needs and they're not you're not abusing them.
Right.
You're just saying what life entails. And no, I won't capitulate to emotional manipulation. and a lack of reason, when you don't have good logic behind what your mission or your endeavor is, and it affects other people, us as adults, we're going to step in and say no. And basically, I don't care what your feelings are. Yeah, and that's,
Yeah.
I say that respectfully, like,
Yeah.
yeah, just like the truth and reality and how it functions doesn't care about your emotions. We've got to be focused on what's true and right and what's functional.
Annie made me laugh. You reminded me of years and years and years ago. I had a friend, and she was a single mother, and we were going somewhere, and she was trying to get the little girl to get dressed, and she was negotiating with her. And she was saying, if you do this, then when we get there, I'll get you such and such. And this had gone on for 10 or 15 minutes waiting for the little girl to get dressed. And I stepped in and I said, you don't negotiate with a child. And she
Yeah,
she said, well, I want to give her choices. I said, here's a choice: blue shirt, red shirt. Which do you want?
yeah,
And
yeah, yeah.
the little girl said, red shirt. And I said, see, it's easy.
Yeah,
Which is easy for
yeah,
me since I don't have children. But yeah,
sure.
I just remembered, my mom and dad did not negotiate with me. This is what you're going to do, and you're going to do it now, or there will be consequences.
Yep,
It
that's it.
works.
That's what life comes down to. I mean, sure, we want to nurture their emotional body, their emotional makeup, and we want to not bulldoze them and totally
Right.
usurp their free will all the time. So that's when you step into the category of being an overbearing or a micromanaging parent.
Hmm.
You don't want to do that. But on the opposite, this whole like live and let live, my children are autonomous and free. Well, they're going to bumble through life, making mistakes and creating havoc too. And you're just operating on this idea that they're so hypersensitive that you can't tell them no and you can't tell them yes with things that they don't want to accept. Life is not like that. Yeah.
Yeah, so I guess here in Australia, there's a big parenting movement, and even the government's got in on it. It's called the Positive Parenting Program. Uh, and yeah, it seems to be all about really treading around children so lightly because they are so fragile. That idea that they are so fragile and anything you say might traumatize them, and they'll let you know when they're adults what that did to them. It's almost like this psyop uh, from our own upbringing of feeling oppressed and that we've got to compensate for that. But who is the real oppressor? And I don't think it was our parents. It was
Hmm.
circumstances that the system creates for us.
Hmm.
Mm.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
it kind of reminds me of that cultural Marxism, at least how
Hmm.
it turned out for adults anyway. That they give you this surface level idea of what it is to be liberated. I can do whatever I want with my sexuality. I can affiliate with any identity. I'm free, in the system. And that's like how a bunch of normies think that they're liberated. And that's kind of, this isn't just a facet of it to apply for your children. But I kind of appreciate the older world of doing the other way of doing things, which is the wise, the elders of your community, your parents, whatever, they say they're teaching you that when you do this in nature or with other people, this is a consequence. And this is a boundary, and this is a rule and a law for a reason. And it's truly grounded in the truth and sound principles and ethics. Um, that's what I live for now. Like, I'm not trying to just be, live and we'll make our own truth, and we'll all just pussyfoot around each other because we're also emotional, and we have a right to be, anyway. So I think you get the picture. We're just
It-
we're
you,
keep it real.
Someone sent me a video that they promised me was not a joke. It was a real video, and I think it was. It'd be great if I could find it other than being reposted. But it was some political event that happened in Canada, and the people were so woke that they were no longer functioning. They couldn't
Yep.
function. It was well, getting up to the podium to speak. I'm a non-binary person, and I know that that cisgender woman, she too came in with a certain set of biases. And I know she meant me no offense. I mean, and this went on for a couple of minutes, and it was unreal. It was surreal in
Yeah.
its dysfunction. And this is
Yeah.
what happens when when people are coddled in non-reality.
Yeah. 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 You
It's the
become
outcome.
so divorced from reality, so impractical. Just sort of, yeah, in this self-deluded trance, and
Hmm.
you and everyone else has to live with the aftermath of that.
Hmm. Yeah,
So yeah, that's part of this ameliorating ourselves and this world and everything out of it is we can't coddle people in their self-delusion, not unless they want to live isolated and the repercussions of their delusion is totally on them, which we're kind of, there's a degree of that. People have the right to foster any self-delusion and live according to that, fine. But when it becomes at the effect of others, then there's absolutely no one has to tolerate nonsense and lies and fallacies. And then this idea of subjective truth, the truth is subjective and you can choose what truth
I know
is
that one.
also a new,
That drives
yeah,
me
that was,
crazy when people say, "Well, this is my truth," and it's like, what?
yeah, yeah, it's basically, this is my delusion. Give me the right to choose what reality is and isn't, and
Yeah,
you can choose what reality is and isn't, and
yeah,
we can accept to agree to disagree, sort of
yeah.
nonsense.
Well, then
So
what's happening is what you were talking about with your little girl. What happens then in something like that is that you're constantly negotiating
Yes.
because now, is it okay if I say this? No, that's not okay because, so truth is truth, and it may be brutal, but as Alan said to me about truth, truth doesn't care whether you like it or not.
Yep.
It
Yep.
doesn't care. It's just going
Yeah.
to cut right through that.
Yeah. And if you go through life always trying to withhold the truth or the harsher aspects of reality, well, that's what you've got today. We've got a bunch of adults that are so emotionally inept, they have no internal fortitude to deal with the circumstances we're involved in now. Like,
Hmm.
people need to suck it up and realize that the reality of things are coming down on us. Like, you're not going to have freedom. You're going to be, or do you want to live in your entertainment bubble and, you know, put your consciousness in the metaverse or the cloud or whatever crap it is?
Hmm.
That's because we've been rendered so emotionally inept and spoon fed and coddled by the system and our parents as a result. We have no upstanding, um, strong, independent families that can really resist this. It's kind of just going to become who can survive.
Hmm.
Sadly, it feels like it's just going to be what minority or group can live on the fringes and survive what is coming towards us.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
yeah, so I guess to summarize all that, my attitudes have changed because now on the other side, I saw how much self-importance on the fringe of narcissism I was supporting in my child. That it was all about her and her own agendas, and nobody else's state of peace mattered.
Hmm.
Um, and yeah, hanging out with any new age people these days, it's like this healing carrot has always dangled in front of me. Let's heal together. Let's meditate. Let's do this. Let's do
I'm
that.
sorry, I'm laughing.
That was nice
It's hilarious.
That was nice 5 years ago. I've gotten over my supposed traumas. We've just got to get on with the work now. I want to talk to you about what needs to be done,
Hmm.
rather than the new age book you just read or the breath work that we could do. Sure, that's nice for de-stressing. That can come in sometimes, but it's all about the practical solutions now, and that in itself brings healing. You know,
Yes.
when I first came here and I would get upset about certain things, I thought, what should I do? I'm going to turn the compost while I think on this. And at the end of that turning of the compost, I felt better rather than just sitting there
Yes.
idle, stewing on my thoughts. I realized I just needed to get over it.
Yeah.
Yes. It come. I think I mentioned this before, Melissa, when we had our chat initially. But I like to always refer people to the Maslow's hierarchy of needs, which
Hmm.
you may be familiar with.
Hmm.
That there's a pyramid and a hierarchy of needs, and all of our lives should basically kind of adhere to this to some degree. And down the bottom of the hierarchy of needs is food, water security, general security for yourself and your family, and shelter. Without food, water, and shelter, and your sense of safety to sleep at night and whatever, nothing else matters. Your
Hmm.
spiritual ascensionism, your attainment, that goes right out the window. So
Hmm.
second on your hierarchy of needs is then your is communal, is like what you need in terms of exchange of goods and services, and that's kind of on the second from the bottom echelon of needs, and then you're going up into what what you can do, whether you want to learn arts and crafts, and whether you want to dive into your consciousness more deeply, and spiritual attainment being right up the top of the hierarchy of needs. So a lot of people, when they fail on this sort of, like, okay, just some notional person, they feel that there's a problem with their life in the city and how meaningless and purposeless it all feels. They want to go and become more sufficient, self-sufficient, and learn life skills, and transition into a kind of a more conscientious way of living.
Hmm.
They usually take it on, but their hierarchy of needs is all askew, and they start preoccupying themselves with things that are higher up Maslow's hierarchy of needs, and then the things down the bottom, which are essential for your survival and your psychological well-being, can become neglected, and sooner or later the system breaks down. So I try to always remind people, get a basic understanding of Maslow's hierarchy of needs. You've got to be practical, and I think so much of the new age drivel that's been fed to us, and especially has proliferated in the West, has rendered people very impractical.
Hmm.
They're so immersed in their navel gazing and their self obsession of their spirituality and all this sort of stuff, that yeah, we've got a whole generation of very incompetent people, and we can't deal with incompetence in the face of scarcity and adversity.
Yeah, the Eastern traditions are ancient, and what is useless is the way that some of the Eastern thought has been brought into the New Age and turned into a soup of meaningless nothing. But I think there's some Zen Buddhist saying, I can't tell you who said it, but it's, before enlightenment, chop wood, carry water.
Yeah,
After enlightenment, chop wood, carry water. It's like
yeah,
it's the same thing.
yep,
You still have to heat yourself and hydrate yourself, whether you're or not.
yes,
It's just basic.
yeah. Or maybe you can transcend your biological needs because we're all breatharians. Truly,
Yeah.
just
It's so
yeah,
true. Yeah. It's so
Yeah.
true. I was actually considering that very thing this morning. There's one of the things, it's not just New Age necessarily or Eastern influenced, but there, there's a thread of it that comes down through Gnosticism, which creates dualism. Not all Gnosticism is, there's some good thought there, but
Yeah.
dualism is not a great way to look at, matter bad, spirit good. And then that
Yes.
means that people are happy to sit around alming and gonging and, doing sound bowls and, trying to get their chi. And, it's just, matter matters. And,
Yeah.
you got to take care of basic needs.
Yeah. And then all those higher aspirations and this notion of ascension and spiritual growth, that can unfold once the foundations are in place.
Hmm.
Like once once I've got all this abundance and my notional food forest is producing and I've got all the food and water security and I've got all the connections, well then I can dive deep into the deepest aspects of philosophy and um, attainment, all these forms of intellectual and spiritual attainment. So
And
I'm careful when I criticize the New Age movement, what we broadly call that I don't throw the baby out with the bathwater because obviously there's a lot of truths in there which have been used to pull on people's heartstrings or get their
hmm
attention.
hmm
But that's where all, the greatest lies are closest to the truth, I
yeah,
say. And
yeah,
it's a good expression that basically don't throw it all out. Just be very cautious when you look at it that you don't end up being, again, like a navel gazer or too right brained and
hmm
impractical for your immediate needs. Because we've got to be participating in this physical reality. That's what I consider to be spiritual, actually, is someone that is improving and creating better circumstances for themselves and those around them in a way that isn't exploitative. That's what real spiritual behavior to me is. It's actually real ethics and real selflessness. That all makes sense. But it's not done in the spiritual dimension and the etheric plane of existence. It's done right here, right now in the
Well,
physical.
you know them by their fruits. That's,
Yes.
that's a tangible. Alan in the Redux that I put up last Sunday, he said something about how it's just it's ancient wisdom that you can't teach people, and he means like higher truths, if they
Yep.
need to have a full belly. If you're
Mm,
hungry, you
that's right.
can't concentrate on your, higher things.
Yep.
Or
That's right. So
you're
that's
worried and
Maslow's.
stressed. Yeah,
That's the
it's
hierarchy of needs right
yep,
there, and it's so
yeah,
true.
it is. So
Um.
now,
So,
go ahead.
well, I was going to say that I don't want to get on a tangent that consumes everything. So you're probably feeling the exact same time to move on to the next topic.
Well, I was just remembering that Annie wanted us to talk a little bit about the time that you spent and some of the things that you learned in different communities and the different things that you did. I'm going to share a video that she shared with me that shows some of your gardening work, which is really cool and inspiring.
It's amazing what we can do to regenerate nature's life support systems and create edible landscape. Imagine you like walking through the Garden of Eden. That's what I envision and that's what I wish to co-create. Permaculture, recreating Eden with everyone. My name's Adon and I have a real interest in what you might call permaculture, sustainable living, self-reliance, those types of things. And I've come to Hazelcombe Farm because Dan and Nikki have envisioned the same thing. They want to create the same thing. So I'd like to come and help them regreen and reforest the valley here and inspire other people that are on that path too. And that's why I love being here. I began my journey at Zaytuna Farm, the Permaculture Research Institute by Geoff Lawton. And it was a really great, liberating experience. I got to see systems orchestrated by man that were incredible, abundant and beautiful, and I could see that we can support not only ourselves but communities that have a respect first and foremost with nature and with each other. First we focus on what we term mainframe design, and we design our farms around the flow of water. So we have very beautiful catchments here that are just singing to be utilised. So we want to retain it and disperse it where we want into systems, and then from that flow of water we design our animal systems, our food forests, annual cropping, whatever it may be. We're like painting a canvas, if you like. We're artists, so you name it, it can be anything. Well, some of the values and ethics of permaculture is care to oneself, care to others, and care to nature as well. And if we do this and return surplus or share surplus freely, we'd be living in abundance, because that's what it's about. It's not impairing or limiting and creating scarcity, which is often the financial model where we have a tendency to hoard. We could be living in a world of profusion and without scarcity, which we only can imagine, you know. No one needs to be an expert to get involved. We want people to come in, get their hands dirty and put a shovel in their hand, and then we can all help each other, and that can be everything from, you know, carpentry to building to working with soils, working with animals. It's about this land custodianship. We want people here and involved, absolutely. And not only that, but live in harmony with nature, and I'm here to support them and they support me to make it happen.
She just wanted you to touch on what you learned in the various adventures that you've had of trying to be part of a community and bring some of these ideas and ideals that you have to these communities. And there are good, you know, there are good stories, and there are stories where, you know, the lesson was, this isn't my community. So,
Yeah. Yeah, well, this idea too, just touching on community, like, it's thrown about so loosely.
mm-hmm.
It just means, well, what common unity. That's how I break apart the word. So to call it all community isn't necessarily accurate, because, for example, when I was 2 years at Geoff Lawton's institute, Zaytuna Farm, on the New South Wales Queensland border,
Mm-hmm.
it was a research institute. He was, so to speak, from his own words, he was farming students. He farmed many other things, but that's how he was termed. We're not here to be the optimal production of the food and yields necessarily, which they do. They produce amazing stuff, but his primary goal is to farm students. So in that community, I was exposed to all different age brackets and people from all kinds of, you know, amazing nationalities. Some of them from the steppe regions and like of Kazakhstan, and some were from South America, and some were from Turkey and Europe, and all, and everyone was there to learn anything to do with these life skills of permaculture, of regenerative agriculture. So it was incredible for learning anything that pertained to that, and all different minds working and problem solving, and then practicing on the ground too, because it wasn't just theory. I mean, students would come in and learn theory, but it was always followed through with practical and on the field. But nonetheless, I was wary of some of the human tendencies to, you know, form factions and groups, or become like moths to a flame, so to speak, to look for a figurehead or a follower, to be followers. And I was really able to sort of see how that manifests in a group of people, in any kind of social dynamic. And other communities, I was just starting off these farm projects. So maybe a friend of mine bought a big rural property, and the agenda was to teach courses and get the land producing through water harvesting techniques. So Geoff Lawton really was a real master of water harvesting, earthworks, and terraforming, so that you can take a landscape and before you know it, you've got really good water security, and you design your landscape around the flow of water. So this is good permaculture design. That where you put your roads, where you put your structures, works in symbiosis with where you put your productive areas, and it all kind of flows and feeds. One system feeds the other. And I learned too at that institute. I did courses in soil microbiology, and then it led to watercourse restoration, because water harvesting earthworks has to also become quite knowledgeable about the tributaries and the watercourses, how hydrology works, how we can actually reverse the damage of a degraded water course. So that was critical, and I learned even through the government, like Landcare. Australia has a group called Landcare, and they will put on in rural areas like talks and seminars and whatever. So there was a fellow from America called Craig Sponholtz, and he's a master of understanding how the watercourse works and how to re-establish the watercourse in ways that it starts to regenerate itself and become more hydrated and more functional. And I learned from others in that field. And then I learned more about agroforestry, how to harvest timber and plant and do it in a way that's sustainable. So I was looking to basically, and I was exposed to many that were real experts in the field, and keep broadening on all those skill sets.
But what was it like with people in the
With
last decade and a half?
yeah, well, so with people, which is another topic again. That's the most complex part of the system, really, isn't it? Like
Mm-hmm.
permaculture, it's looking to create a permanence in the system. But the most fickle and inconsistent part of any system is humans. Um, I could go on all day about how I think any notional community should be structured to succeed. But when it comes down to it, it's ultimately your maturity, your tendency to be inadequate in what you say and what you do. Like, so I saw a lot about what fails. I saw a lot about what is a typical human inadequacy. But to say that I was like, again, what's your concept of community and the different arrangements I was in, it's really hard to say this works and this doesn't. Like that, because that just so much of that comes down to um, your development as an individual.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I
So
don't
it's
know
not
whether
necessarily the structure of it or the framework that the community has said this is how we're going to function as a community, but what the people themselves bring to it and how that can either make a community flourish or fall apart.
yeah, I would say that
Yeah.
that over my now 16 years of sort of doing this sort of stuff, I've realized that that is what determines the success, really. Like you could associate with a demographic of people that have all the same values as you. They might be into the same conspiracy theories. They might value self-sufficiency and natural food and health and etc. You think you've got the same ethos, right? But then you realize after, like Geoff Lawton used to say, it takes 6 months to really get to know someone, and I agree. 3 months usually the facades start to break down because they're quite arduous to maintain a facade, or like a false personage of what you are putting up to be agreeable to everyone else.
Mm-hmm.
6 months, you really get to know people based on their habits and, yeah, their inadequacies. Um, I learned that I could align myself and put myself around those that have the same ethos in concept, but I realized that I would find a more consistent, reliable, salt of the earth human that could be just living down the street and he's just some bushy and he doesn't understand most of the things that I'm interested in, most of my values. Like there's a relationship and there's similar values, but it's not to the same extent, you know. We're not going to
Mm-hmm.
have the same language that me and you can talk right now about the system or whatever it is. He might be more of a seemingly a layman, and on surface level, you might go, oh, he would not be a viable person for this community. But then you realize he's actually the one that has that work ethic and that consistency and that value system that makes him more reliable than the person that you thought had all the values that you did and turns
Mm-hmm.
out to be all over the place, inconsistent, stuck in their habits, and then basically wants to run back to the system with their open arms to be spoon fed. so,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
so, you know, like just all I'm saying is we think associating with people like ourselves with the same nomenclature or language or lingo and the same supposed value system is what makes it immune to failure. But I've discovered it's nothing close to that, really.
Mm-hmm.
That there's some people that truly take on being um, truly principled and consistent and reliable as a human and equitable in their exchange. So, you know, I suppose I've grown more wise in determining who's able to talk the talk and who's able to walk the talk.
So I'll just mention now how people can reach us. Um, the email is half truths make great lies at outlook.com. If you're looking for people to meet and potentially live with or live nearby, that's how you can reach us.
Repeat it one more time. Just I can make a little graphic too and put with it, but
Half truths make great lies at outlook.com.
okay, great. And it's Annie and Aiden.
Yeah. Yeah, we'd love to meet people. There is a family that we've been getting to know and seem like they want to get started with us, and we're excited about that. But yeah, the more the merrier.
But on the trying to create an off grid community subject, we're still weighing up and we've got to look deeper into, well, if you do it informally, like you create a contract, sure, with someone that you know in concept's going to live with you on the land. Well, that's an informal thing in the eyes of the law or the legal system.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And if you try and do it legally, well, we know the system makes that very hard to do.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, we've looked at foundations, but the implications to maintaining and having a foundation is you've got to open up a bank account and money goes into it, and then there needs to be uh, basically a meeting with enough members of the foundation, and all the subjects and the hours are recorded. And then the more you look at what it takes to have a foundation, which is an avenue to having multiple people on a site in a more
Mm-hmm.
legal or legal premise anyway, it becomes more complicated and the loopholes are getting worse. And we know that all the worst corporations and NGOs are foundations. So it's almost like I'm throwing that out as in the too hard basket, or I'm not really interested in doing foundations.
Mm-hmm.
And what other legal frameworks is there for having multiple people living on a site? And then there's the whole side of things. Do I want to go legal and buy the system? Like, especially this day and age, am I going to go to council for ask permission for every aspect of how we establish our supposed multiple occupancy community. So, and then if we're not doing it legal and formal by the book, are the people that are in concept going to join us? Are they going to be content with not having concrete ownership, or how do we have that sense that it's theirs and it's theirs forever? These are all difficult things for us to work through. We're not entirely sure whether to go informal or formal, and or legal, or not necessarily illegal. Like we
Well,
know that private. Sorry.
I was just going to say the trouble with legal is it's profound. It opens up a lot of problems because
Mm,
the moment that you do that, they've got a foot in the door, and then
yes.
it's sort of like, well, we're going to fine you or imprison you because you didn't prune your fruit trees. That once you are registered and on the books and they're looking at you and you've got this thing going on, then it's
Yep.
not just a matter of the people that you're doing it with and everybody protecting their interests, etc., but it's allowing the state to come in and say, well, you can't have these people here because the zoning isn't right here, and you've got to have septic, and we've got to, I mean,
Uh-huh.
it's,
Yes.
I think it's okay for me to say at this point that there was a lot that we didn't do by the books with Alan, and it was always that way. I mean, one example was, how did we heat ourselves and why did that happen that we did that?
Yep.
And he moved into that house before I was, before I came up, but it had an oil burning, you know, system. I don't think it was. I don't remember what kind of oil fuel it was, but that was what the heat was. But in order for you to get the fuel to fill it up, then the state had to come out at least once a year, but I think it was twice a year. They had to come out before you started it up for the season and when they filled it up, and then they had to come out and inspect it at the end of the season. And so
Right.
Alan got a hold of that idea and he said, no, no, that's not happening. So he actually
Yep.
built a wood burning stove. I mean, it was a beautiful stove, but he, welded that together, made a stove, cut a hole in the um, roof, and put that in there. Then had an attack, which he talked about on the radio, where somebody, tried to drop some kind of incendiary device down there. So he had to get a different kind of system that was more protected from the air. But at any rate, when I got there, all of the heat in the house was wood burning stove. Now that was
Yep.
fine in Ontario, but in even when I was in Canada, I think it was um, well, I know that Montreal had big issues with wood burning stoves. They had to
Yep.
be environmentally friendly, et cetera, et cetera. So the moment that you register something, same thing. I think that thunderstorm might be finally getting here, but another thing was the well.
Yep.
So you can have the well dug and it's up to code and it's and there was a well on the land, but it had been dormant and that had been put in professionally, and it would have been easy to get it to be operable again, but it would have required people coming out to inspect it, and then that's it. And Alan always said, hey, they get a foot in and then they live there with you.
Yep.
They're there
I
all the
totally
time,
agree.
and so he built, he dug his own well,
Mm.
and it was separate from the one that was there. So he dug his own well. Same thing with the septic. You're not supposed to have a septic that you do yourself, but he did. So
Yeah. Yeah. That's right. And
yeah,
I always have felt, and which I was sort of getting to, that if you know that you're doing things that aren't polluting, that you're doing things that aren't affecting your neighbors, it's better to ask, what do they say, for forgiveness than permission.
Yes. Yeah.
Like it's
Yeah.
better
Yeah.
you don't live your life where every step you're going to take, you're asking for permission from these regulatory bodies and these little profiteers and interlopers, because that's right. Ultimately, they're just profiteers um, looking for naive individuals to basically come in and give ticks of approval and to every aspect of your life.
Hmm.
I know that if I'm doing a compost toilet system, it's done in a way that doesn't threaten the waterways or pollution and all that. If I'm doing all of these things you're mentioning, whether it be heating my own house, or altering a water course or digging your own well, that is a fundamental human right. It you really, if you want to look at the lawful stuff, well, the first aspect of being a human is you have the ability to stand on the land. And if you have
Hmm.
the ability to stand on the land and exist, then you should obviously inherently, that's intrinsically linked with your capacity to get water off the land, to
Hmm.
harvest resources from the land. That is, I don't know whether you call that common law or natural law, but they are inalienable rights.
Hmm.
They're without question.
It
And
was
most
so
of these
bad.
things that, sorry,
No, I was just going to say it was so bad in Canada that capturing water is actually not legal. I don't know if it's countrywide or if it's just in some provinces, but it wasn't legal to do any kind of big capturing catchment system for water where we were, which is just
yeah,
crazy.
that's it. How can they claim a right of ownership over what falls from the sky? So if something is already in your environment or it falls from the sky like water, how can anyone claim a right of ownership over it
Well,
when it's directly? Yeah,
it is. I mean, first of all, Canada is just full of water. They could do hydroelectric just like that. They don't need, any other way of supplying energy for themselves because it's just water everywhere. But the
yeah,
theory that the reasoning behind not being able to do water catchment is that if you catch water that was going to hit the ground, then you're depriving the ground and the where it was going to run and the natural you're you know depriving the natural course of events, which is just ridiculous.
yeah, yes. That, and then again, that plays into the ignorance and again the twisted academia and how they view it. So actually, it's the opposite. That the more you hold water in the landscape, the more you actually reverse desertification and you build a good hydrology, because the landscape did that naturally before we cut all the forests down and plowed the
Hmm.
fields. We're
Hmm.
creating massive erosion gullies and the water gets out as soon as you have a good heavy rain event, it's straight into the water course, and there's so much turbulence in it that it's cutting the soil away with it. When it should be basic understanding that holding the water in the landscape for longer and pacifying the turbulence in it and keeping the hydrology in those aquifers that are up in the landscape more charged is what creates a really good environment, and it creates a habitable environment. So again, they're operating on a totally false premise, saying that harvesting water could deprive it from some other system. That's absolute nonsense,
Hmm.
because we've destroyed all the floodplains. Australia is a series of floodplains. Most of its hydrology is a series of floodplains. So there's a fella named Peter Andrews in Australia, and he's gotten books called Natural Sequence Farming, and
Hmm.
he proved by turning all the nonsense that the environmentalist groups and councils were cutting all the willows out and stuff, for example. He showed by planting willows and slowing the flow of water through the watercourses, he was able to rehydrate the land and turn waterways that were usually what do you call it when they're just a seasonal flowing creek. He
Hmm.
made them perennial. Like he charged the aquifer so much that they flew all the time. And when all the surrounding farms that were on that watercourse were in drought, his waterways were still flowing and had all the life in it. And his therefore, as a consequence, his farm was more productive. And he proved that by doing all these non-kosher things that councils would have given him fines for, because he was planting willow trees
Mm-hmm.
and planting other species and doing leaky dams or leaky weirs.
Mm-hmm.
He was teaching people that this is all lies. And after pushing against the system for so long, he finally started to get traction, and people in council were waking up and going, wow, the willows aren't the enemy. The willows are actually an ally, the willow trees that they're trying to exterminate.
Mm-hmm.
So again, that's just an example. We don't know how to defend ourselves from these interlopers if we don't even understand the real principles of how ecosystems work, of how we can harmonize with them and not be destructive to it. To prove that you don't need their septic systems, to prove that you don't need to ask
Mm-hmm.
permission for every
Mm-hmm.
drop of water that you harvest.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the thing, knowing enough in yourself so that you don't become answerable for every aspect of your life. So I'm certainly advocating that we cannot be answerable all the time. And in fact, the more you do, the more you'll probably be exhausted of your 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 resources and your time, because they'll just get more and more a foothold into your life, and yeah, render it in like so difficult and so costly that you it's not sustainable.
Well, you know how Alan would always say or often say, "We are the business. We are the business." Well,
Yeah.
that I mean, what bureaucratic micromanaging is using us as the business. And
Yep.
when you take advantage of the things that they offer you, and I'm not saying that you shouldn't take your social security, or you shouldn't take, that's not what I'm saying, but every carrot has a stick.
Yeah.
And so you have to look at it very carefully and say, how much government involvement do I have here?
Mm.
And, I mean, I can tell you one thing, I sure don't like property taxes here in this particular county, in this state. It's just disgusting.
Mm.
But at the moment, that's where I am and that's what I'm doing. But, the idea of living in a way that's not quite so much government bureaucracy on it is, I mean, but if you own a home, that's what you have to deal with, you know.
Yeah,
It's
to more or less degree. I
yeah.
think the more we at least get into the more rural areas, the less there's that oversight, and there's less that you can be micromanaged. I mean, sure, that's going to keep getting worse too as more of these AI systems become online. I'm sure they're only going to become more far-reaching how much they intermeddle with your affairs and impose themselves. So
Well,
that's where it gets. Yeah,
that's true, and but it's also too that people accept it. I mean, this is they accept that kind of intrusion.
yeah,
And here's another little Alan story. But when you said the AI and the mic, it made me think of this. But he listened to all kinds of things. He liked, to hear a preacher on shortwave radio, or an alternate truther patriot person, or I wouldn't say he ever really loved the CBC, not very much, not state propaganda, but he listened to a lot of stuff. And we listened to an American preacher regularly who was highly entertaining. And he would, he had good things to say, and he made fun of Bible believing Christians. Now, he was a preacher, but he was, really getting under your skin and saying, let's look at this from a different angle. So Alan just loved him, thought he was highly entertaining. And then one day, it all went south because the preacher was telling the audience there on shortwave radio that he supplemented his income by flying a small plane and going around and taking footage, filming people's land to make sure that they didn't have a structure on the land. In other words, tax compliance.
What?
Yeah. So he was doing that. Now with AI and drones, this is all going to be totally automated, completely automated with no complaints department. But when the preacher said that, that was the last time that Alan listened to him, even though he was highly amusing. He's like, no, 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 no. Not somebody who's
Yeah.
out enforcing tax compliance. No, not even for a laugh. No, thank you. But
Yeah.
yeah, so that's what you've got. I mean, on a large scale, this is the system that we're going into with the the crypto. So what we call cryptocurrency that everybody's been so in love with for years and years is not about the cryptocurrency, even though people are making a fortune on it and they're trading in it and they're hyping it up. And, the blockchain technology that's underneath it that allows them to track every aspect of every transaction from the mineral that was mined in the ground, where was it mined, when was, how did it, all of that's trackable now on blockchain technology. And so, and it's already being used for compliance and theft of resources. So the example would be if you are the country of Belize and you have borrowed money from the IMF and you have put up X amount of your ocean front or some interior lake or mineral or, waterbed, and that's your collateral on that loan. The moment that you default, instantly, you lose you've lost that resource. You've given it away to the IMF and to all of the other stakeholders that are behind that because the blockchain is tracking it and it's a series of things that go into effect. So you're late on the payment, that triggers this, the next thing down the chain gets triggered, and it is all seamless with no bureaucratic control, no complaints department. It's done. And this is how countries, including the US, and I'm sure it's happening all over Australia, where public lands are put up as collateral on loans. And,
Mm.
just little by little, they are lost
Yeah.
when a debt doesn't get repaid quickly enough. And I haven't looked into the US to know for sure that I know that, but I know, just because looking at Al Gore and his father and what they did with the oil guy whose name escapes me at the moment, but that's exactly what happened there, where people sold it out. So now it's all being done automated.
Yep. Yeah.
Yeah,
No, it's extremely precarious. The
yeah.
the degree of um, anonymity, if that's the word,
Mm-hmm.
is is slowly dissolving into nothing. Like, I will be, I touch on even with you. We spoke a little bit about this notion of what they're calling the intracorporeal nano network. So they're monitoring you real time via the cloud, via your digital twin,
Mm-hmm.
or your vital organs and what they're doing. Like, this stuff is so brazenly brought out now.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I've looked at what Palantir and DARPA's doing with this surveillance system, this AI surveillance system that has insight into everything. You think you're a bit safe because you're rural, or you're not.
Mm-hmm.
But it's coming to the circumstances now where I'm just like, if I know that I'm, as a family unit, we're doing something that's not harming anyone, it directly pertains to our healthy existence. If they're going to come and knock on my door and tell me that I need, like, if they threaten my existence to any major extent, it's kind of like, well, this is over war, like
Mm-hmm.
I'm doing the fundamentals to survive, and you're
Mm-hmm.
coming and saying that I can't do this and I can't do that. Well, it's like it's at a point now where when it gets that autocratic, um, it's almost going to be like you're against, you're backed into the corner, and you
Mm-hmm.
have to fight. I don't know. It's I'm not living my life like we discussed, where I'm asking for permission over the most basic and fundamental things to exist.
Mm-hmm.
Anything beyond that now is just a complete and utter act of war, and I need to treat it so, and we need to treat it so. Like, there's no more beating around the bush. We if we can't even get on the land, make honest steps for our own survival and subsistence without being imposed upon by these interlopers, well, that's it. Then we're in a survival state, and we need to defend ourselves.
Well, that's true. Just you got to stand on that. I mean,
Yeah,
people need to stand on that. As we do have, these are basic things about our survival. I hate to call them rights because we know they're being stripped away, but these are God given.
yeah,
And
yeah.
control freaks are in charge, and they want to micromanage everything. So yeah, I mean, we went a long way from whether the
Yeah, and that
people that were coming into the community should do it, kind of under the radar, or, in a foundation trust kind of situation. But it's,
kind of answered it. Yeah,
I guess it then becomes a matter of trust,
yeah.
and anyone we meet are most welcome to interrogate us, and I guess we should do the same because, uh, yeah, it's almost in a way trying to recreate a tribe that's got their own thoughts, their own production. And what'd you say last night, Aiden? If you can't even produce your own ideas or your own potatoes, you're a slave.
I
Yeah.
was paraphrasing a quote, but yeah, like I said right from the beginning that without self sufficiency, you will always be a slave, more or less. You
Hmm.
know,
Hmm.
because like everyone here on your Cutting Through the Matrix podcast and that are familiar with Alan's work, they're probably going to have a line in the sand with what they will accept in the final stages of this rollout of,
Uh,
well, what do you want to call it? Agenda
yeah.
2030,
Yeah.
where the complete loss of the world as we know it. So we're looking for those with the resilience, and that, yes, that aren't super citizens that feel that everything's got to be ticked off by the establishment to move forward. But we know in that way we're not going to be causing troubles, and we're going to be doing things that are not at all harmful to anyone. And so we know we're,
And it's important to not be aggressive, of course.
yeah, of course.
Yes, yeah. I mean, it very much is a live and let live mentality, and you're just trying to live and have a family and grow things and contribute to your environment. And I think if you've got that kind of, we're just here.
Yeah,
Yeah, I mean, who knows? Who knows what the future holds? But I'll say one thing. I almost feel like I want to stop recording here shortly, just because I'm afraid of a power outage with this kind of thunderstorm. I don't want to lose the recording, but I did want to talk. You said trust, and so I guess it just comes down to trust. And I'll tell you from my experiences since Alan's gone, and the ideas that I have about, some of what I'm doing is it's digital, it's like a digital tribe. You don't necessarily get to see people face to face, and that's unfortunate, but there is always an element that I mean, I know this from my whole life, but I really know it now, where I have an idea that I'm trying to do, is that people are people, and they bring their baggage and their bad behavior with them. They bring their, what you were talking about, lack of maturity. They're just kind of giving up at the first time that something gets hard or difficult, or well, I wanted to homestead, but I didn't know we weren't going to have TV, and whatever it is that they bring with them. And I've I've been disappointed by trusting people, and trust can be broken, and so there's a disappointment that goes with it. But a big lesson that I will share with you is that it's important not to let people's breaking of trust and anything that they do that has that kind of a harmful effect, because you trusted them, you brought them into your situation, you said, you whatever it is, and they flake on you or they undermine what you're doing. It's just important, I've learned, to not let the bad behavior of other people get you down.
Yeah.
That it's a real victory when you can say, okay, you're an idiot, and you broke my trust, and that was painful, but I'm still going to do what I do with an open heart,
Yeah.
and the very best intentions for what I'm trying to build here and what I'm trying to do, because it is necessary right now for people like you to draw your line in the sand and have what I consider to be high ideals. And all, what is a high ideal? It's just you wanting to bring the very best of you up and out. To me, that's all a high
Yeah.
ideal is. This is me. This is my heart and my soul and my passion. And all I want to do is just share it. I just want to put it out there and share it. And
Yeah.
we need more of that, a lot more of that right now. Not
Yeah. Well,
people
there is more.
cowering and, living in fear.
Yeah, and so isolated. It's like I've only got to service my own needs, and I don't care about anyone else. That's
That's
the
right. Yeah.
commercial, commerce-oriented empire that we live in, and I don't see a healthy future until we can start to reverse that
Yeah.
and get back to that equitable exchange where people aren't trying to reward each other to get a
Mm-hmm.
little bit more out of each deal.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, so just people with basic aspirations to improve, really,
Mm-hmm.
not just only obsess about their own immediate needs and stuff. But,
Mm-hmm.
we're in a situation where there's going to be upheaval, and we've got to put our roots down and again. And you have to sort your own stuff out first, like charity starts in the home. Um, Once you get to a point where you've got that abundance and that time, then you immediately start to interact with the community and share more. And
Mm-hmm.
but to me, yeah, now it's not survivalism like your doomsday prepper, because that's has all these overtones of like fear and
Mm-hmm.
um, aggression. I don't want it to be like that. But there are certainly aspects of survivalism. Like it'd be naive to say otherwise.
Mm-hmm.
It's just a fundamental resurgence of people on the land and taking this earth custodianship seriously, and getting the life skills back because we've lost all the life skills. So
Yeah.
yeah, that's what we're really about. And we can talk about the problems till the cows come home as well, which in
Yeah.
fact I think's usually been a deterrent from a lot of people because I talk about the problems and I'm not scared to navigate through those areas without affecting my head's been in these topics,
Right.
and I'll have the same energy. But if someone isn't really capable of, could be talking about the chemtrail operations, or if it's talking about the whatever you want to call it, Epstein files or whatever ominous conspiracy, if just talking about them, they can't cope with, well, I'd say we're probably not compatible. Like you've got to be able to you got to be able to cope with that emotionally, and then also cope with the solutions. Where my problem was a bit in the first years, I was able to go into all the dark stuff,
Hmm.
and I thought because they're interested in the solutions, they would also be able to talk about the problems. But I realized they just scared the hell out of them, and
Hmm.
they would run, and there wasn't that emotional fortitude to deal with it. And that's what we can't have. Like when we're going into this future, it's going to be right in front of our face, the problems that,
I was
yeah.
listening to a little bit of Alan that I thought I might put up this upcoming Sunday, and he was talking about people not being able to handle the bad news. And he was kind of talking a little bit about, new age thinking and not being able to handle the bad news. And he said, well, some people will just say, stop being so negative and don't tell me that, because if you're saying it, then it might happen. And Alan, of course, he's like, and that's where I think
Yeah,
a lot,
right.
or you're going to manifest it, and there's a little bit too much of that kind of thinking. And the
Yeah,
truth is that bad things are going to happen whether you think about them or not. That's
yeah, that's right.
yeah.
I guess then what becomes the purpose of speaking about that is negative? What does it help? Perhaps it helps for us to not get complacent, make
Hmm.
decision for our own protection, know your enemy, and um, make decisions to prepare, I guess. And uh, yeah, I wonder whether it helps people to have their heart set in this as if they know the bad news,
Hmm.
because
Well,
it almost concretes the importance.
to me, there are so many things that are important in humanity, and that's all of, that's our entire creativity and, the love that we have for each other and family, and all of this is at stake. And so if you can't see that there is an enemy, or there are predators, or there are people who don't wish you well, then you can't protect those that you love, and you don't even know that your humanity, your creativity, all of that is in jeopardy. And that's
Yes.
when you just
You got
kind
no
of
immune system.
sleepwalk. Yes, yeah. Well, listen,
Yeah, you've got no immune system.
I'm think it's coming down really super hard here, and I think I just would hate to lose the recording to a power failure, which do tend to happen. So I
Right,
I
yeah.
think that I really enjoy talking with you, and if you share your email address one more time, and we'll um, let people get in touch who might be interested or there.
Half truths make great lies at outlook.com.
Okay, great. Well, Annie and Aiden, I was really looking forward to doing this. We were going to actually be talking and recording last week, and then I said, the books are here, the cutting through books are here, and do you mind very
Yes,
much
we're
if
going to order some.
I so yeah.
Yeah, no, it's
So
a very exciting announcement.
yeah, I was very excited about that. So I wanted to put that up last week, but I'm really, really glad that you could do this with me today. And I know people will get a lot out of this and enjoy it immensely, as I have.
Yeah, what we're going to do is get a fireproof box, a,
And put,
a safe, a safe, and put the wisdom and knowledge in there, whether it be morals and dogma or the transcripts from Ellen's talks. Yeah, it's going
All
to be
right.
protected.
All right.
uh,
You say
Thank you for
bury
the
it in a
call.
safe place. Thank you both. And I will say goodbye to everyone here. I'll stop recording. We can talk a little bit more, but thank you very much.
Thanks, Melissa.
thank you.
I've got something that the world didn't give me, and the world cannot take it away. And I've got something that the world